So I'm with you where it started to feel like this is bigger than football, especially because of all the other guys that ended up getting drafted ahead of him.
Right.
You know, we mentioned Gabriel, Tyler Shuck for the Saints, who they picked 40th overall. Jackson Dart, sure, okay, maybe he's an exciting prospect, but Tyler Shuck is a almost 26-year-old quarterback that,
Come on.
you know what I'm
Come
saying?
on.
So
It's a grown man.
exactly, right? He's a rookie, and he's, I think, the oldest quarterback in the room now that Derek Carr is retired. So
Gotta be.
I mean, how much credence do you give to people just saying, you know what, he didn't interview well, so that's why he dropped?
Well, I do think that's important, but something I sort of when I heard that, I tried to really, really interrogate that. And I wondered, right? This is all presumption. I will qualify it with that. But I do think, especially, I started to think about this even more intensely after Cam Ward was picked first. Because Cam's immediate reaction, the way he carries himself, is like immense gratitude. He's exuding humility. He's so appreciative for the opportunity to even play in the NFL. And I was saying to everyone who listened to me, I was like, it's going to be hard for Shedeur to feel that way when he grew up having, like, I don't know, Jerry Rice and Emmett Smith over his house having cookouts. You know what I mean? Like, this is not something new to him. And I say it in this way, as an educator, when I worked at a boarding school and my sons were super, super little, they would walk around the boarding school with me. And part of what would go through my mind was by the time they go to high school or college, they're not going to be intimidated by any of this. I work at a seminary now, graduate school, and the boys come here and they see the seminary president, they see professors, and they're just like, hi, and they play catch on the lawn of the seminary. So by the time, if any of them go to grad school, they're not going to be like, well, I've never been in a place like this before. So I think that translates. How
Mm-hmm.
would Shador have the same sort of posture as Cam when that's not how he grew up? He grew up with economic privilege. He grew up with resources. His dad is one of the most famous athletes of my lifetime and was heavily involved in his life and took him with all these things. Why would he carry himself, to use the old phrase, with his hat in his hand and act as if he's just so appreciative of this? To the converse, I think he probably acted like, yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be. And so I can see how that sort of posture would not translate to interviewing well for people who are expecting him to have a much more humble approach.
Absolutely. The word that got thrown around a lot was entitled.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And there was one soundbite that kept making the rounds. It was Todd McShay, I think, on the Ryan Russillo podcast. I remember hearing it for the first time, where he said it was kind of like he was trying to dance around it being a criticism, but he said, it's not verbatim, but basically he got the sense, or teams got the sense, two teams that told him separately, that Shedeur didn't seem to care what they think of him.
Yeah.
And you can take that how you want it, right?
Right.
If you already have a negative opinion, just like anything else that he says comes out of his mouth, if you already have a negative opinion of him, you're going to go from he's confident to arrogant,
Yeah.
cocky, entitled, instead of, self-assured, confident, not secure in who he is as a person, so it's all about the perception. And I think the interesting thing you brought up was the gratitude. And obviously he is grateful for a chance to play in the NFL. I think we've seen that from him, post draft. But he's not going to be groveling for a spot in the NFL. And I think people that maybe some of the detractors will say, oh, he's not hungry enough, as
Yeah.
if, having the privilege of being in an NFL locker room, or maybe, I don't know if he was old enough. I think his dad played till he was 37. So yeah, he was
Yeah.
probably around.
He has memories of his dad in the league. Has to.
Yeah. I think on Washington, and especially on the Ravens when he was in his late 30s. So I'm sure he was
Yeah.
around for that. And to me, I'm looking at that as a positive.
Absolutely.
Recent examples. I mean, these guys are all-time greats, but Steph Curry, Klay Thompson grew up in NFL or NBA locker rooms. They know what it's like
Come
to be a
on.
pro athlete. The
Right.
direct quarterback parallel of Patrick Mahomes growing up in MLB locker rooms,
That's
knowing what
right.
it's like to carry himself as a pro athlete. How did these things that I think objectively are positives, how did they get spun into, negatives and attacks on this guy's character?
I think we can't help but understand the way all of these attributes, all of these characteristics have been racialized over time, right? So and it's not just racialized, but also just viewed through the lens of social location, right? So there are qualities you may have as a man that if a woman has them aren't received in the same way, right? We see this all the time with politicians where it's just like, oh, I don't like how she was so loud, or she just came off as like too rude. Whereas a man would be lauded for his assertion, like he's strong, he's confident. These are not qualities that are generally appreciated when female leaders are demonstrating this. I think in the same way, there are ways that we have been socialized in the U.S. to really understand confidence in black men differently. Because I love that you brought up the examples of like Patrick Mahomes, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson. All three of them, I would argue, are extremely confident people, but none
100%.
of them demonstrate that confidence the way Shedeur does, right? Like we're seeing like Steph has moments where he's kind of like talking with the crowd and like he's kind of like mischievous with everything. Clay is cool and collected. Patrick Mahomes is kind of like in his own world and comes out there and destroys the team. I see Shador having a lot of swagger, much like that brother behind your shoulder right there, right? Where he would tell you what round he's gonna knock you out in. And that's not the kind of confidence America has generally loved from brothers. They like the sort of confidence that's like, I'm just working really hard and I'm sort of quiet about it. I'm not worried, I'm not scared, but I'm definitely sure of myself. They don't like the sort of confidence that's going to tell you exactly how you're about to lose, and I think that's the kind of confidence Shador has. I think it's also, as I'm watching the NBA playoffs, I'm so fascinated by Anthony Edwards and how he carries himself
I was
because it's
swear to God, just
very
thinking the
similar
same
style of
thing.
confidence. Very
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah. I think in basketball, it's okay to be an individual, right?
Yes.
It's almost
Yes.
it's almost expected, right? Because when people are having arguments, it's about who the GOAT is. It's not, oh, the 96 Bulls against the 2019 or 2016 Cavs. It's LeBron
Right.
versus Jordan, right?
Yes.
Every basketball conversation is almost distilled to as if it's a one-on-one game at the park,
No
right?
question.
So, I mean, it even comes down to the uniform, right? Like basketball players basically playing in their underwear, you know?
Yeah.
So you can see
Right.
you see every tattoo on their body just about, you see every
Come
expression
on.
they make,
That's
the
right.
names printed on the back of the jersey. And then on the NFL side, there's players that have been in the league for, 5, 10 years, and I legitimately do not know what they look like. You
No.
know, I bring
I,
up this
I
example
had the
like,
same
yeah,
conversation earlier this week when we're talking about Jaden Daniels, a quarterback for the Commanders, and the sort of moment where he was sitting next to Juju Watkins during the March Madness tournament. His mom sat in between, and I was just saying I don't understand what her problem is because if Jaden was walking down the street, I probably wouldn't notice it was him. But if I saw Juju Watkins, I'm like, Juju! Like, it's a very different level of superstardom. To your point, basketball players, it's much easier to cultivate a whole brand around them. Football, I think, Deion aside and other sort of personalities like that, Ocho Cinco, Shannon Sharp, people like that now, it's generally been sort of like cultivating around the myth and the mythology that the person has around them. Like none of us really know Tom Brady's personality until he started commentating on games. You kind of get a sense, oh, this is who he actually is. He's actually a person. Before it was just kind of like, oh, this mythic figure who's just an amazing quarterback, but you never really got to know his personality. Whereas basketball, what you see is what you get.
yeah, I was just thinking about that because I saw a clip of Jalen Warren, a running back from the Steelers, who apparently is Samoan. I had no idea.
No clue.
I mean, his name isn't, Jalen Polamalu or something. So
That's right. That's right.
I assumed he just, he's another black man in the NFL. And then
Exactly. Exactly.
turns out he's 100% Samoan. So
That's
I just
awesome.
thought about that as a funny thing of like, there's just like kind of this anonymous quality that comes with a lot of NFL players